I've just seen Hangouts is now off air.
No, we're live.
Hello and welcome to episode 58 of the Wondrous Stuff Podcast, broadcast live on Google Hangouts on air every other Sunday. This is the place where you'll find news, information and commentary on science, engineering, technology from the past week and beyond, and anything else that interests us from inside our tiny human brains. My name is Richard Smith, and to help us out on this journey to knowledge, let me introduce my colleagues, John Gardner and Ross Davidson. Say hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Oh, we got there in the end.
Smooth.
So, John this week is broadcasting from a hotel elsewhere in the country, so hence why I'm giving it the best shot to try and host the show. Some last minute changes needed there.
I'll tell you, there's some looks I'm getting from people here. When I said hello, chaps, there was 3 people went, hey!
It's going to be an interesting one. Let's get some people in on it.
Yeah, maybe not.
So this week we're going to talk about drugs, legalization, medicinal drugs, and we're going to use e-cigarettes as a jumping off point. Now, Ross, as an e-cigarette user, you might be best placed to introduce the device and the chemicals which it uses.
I have to say, Ross, yours doesn't look like an e-cigarette. It looks like some weapon of mass destruction.
It's a gun.
It's a gun.
Yeah, certainly. So, e-cigarettes. Let's have a think. Ooh, could I do a potted history of them? They were invented by someone in China, I think. And I think he actually worked for a tobacco company. But anyway, the idea is that it's a replacement for traditional tobacco, where you burn it and inhale it, and it's not very good for you, as I'm sure everybody knows. And e-cigarettes, effectively, it vaporizes a liquid that has nicotine in. Now, this is an example of a sort of a modern e-cigarette. What you'll see is got a tank at the top there with liquid in. There's a coil inside which is basically got some cotton in it that's got a wire wrapped around it, and there's a battery in here, and basically it heats up the coil, evaporates the liquid, and that's what you inhale. Now, in terms of what they actually have in them, there's effectively 3 ingredients. So you've got propyl glycerol. You're quite noisy, John.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to mute you. The three main ingredients basically is propyl glycerol, propylene glycerol, which basically is what suspends the flavors. Vegetable glycerol, which is what produces the smoke that you see, which is just basically it's the same chemical that's used in fog machines that you get in clubs and gigs and stuff. So that's sort of the smoke machine. That's the same chemical. Nicotine, and then whatever flavorings you have. And then getting very, very popular these days. I started smoking one over 2 years ago, and I've probably had about 3 cigarettes since, and not fancied going back to them at all. I see absolutely no reason to start smoking again.
I think that the numbers are from 700,000 UK users in 2012 to 2.6 million in 2015. That's how steadily it's growing.
And it's obvious. You can walk the streets of any city and you see so many people using them. So the take up is fairly massive.
Seemingly the take up as well is in the UK 60% users are smokers and 40% are ex-smokers. And never smokers remain negligible in those figures.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we've talked about before about these is I think they're a tremendous benefit, obviously, to not smoking, and to help people give up smoking cigarettes. But there's a lot of bad press about them, which is the thing that annoys me the most, especially people who say. There's a lot of sort of media reports saying they could be like a gateway drug So people are going to take up smoking after trying these, which I suspect there's absolutely no evidence to support whatsoever. The main reason for that is obviously that the flavors you can get, you can get all sorts of flavors, sweet flavors, strawberry, vanilla, raspberry, all sorts of stuff. So obviously people think, oh, kids are going to start using them.
Look, some of the few people at work's got one. One of them, the guys who sit next to me, has got some contraption like yours, which is, I quite frankly think they're preposterous. But he's got some sort of apple pie and custard flavour, and it smells the most sickeningly horrible thing. It's only marginally better than the actual cigarette smoke.
But when you smell it, do you smell it when you're standing next to him and he's smoking it? Or does he?
No, I smell it when he's filling up, I smell it when he's out smoking it. I just... awful.
I think even the smell, it doesn't linger like cigarette smoke smell does. Like cigarette smoke
that
smell,
is true, yeah. And it certainly doesn't get in your clothes or anything like that.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, in terms of the other thing that sort of annoys me as well is the good old Daily Mail.
Yay!
I do look at the Daily Mail every now and then, just purely out of just wanting to have a feeling of superiority. But the amount of stories they have about electronic cigarettes, they're totally demonizing them. And I don't know why. I don't know why there seems to be this backlash against them in certain areas of the media.
There's one story this week about one exploding in someone's a young father's pocket and blaming him for life.
Yeah, I think there's lots of things about this, and there's even there's something called one of the flavourings was found to cause popcorn lung, because what they say is right that they all use food grade flavourings, but none of these food grade flavourings have actually been tested for inhalation.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm going. I have a feeling I'm going mute again. There's going to be some noise.
Yeah, I mean the one about the popcorn lung is interesting. That was basically the flavouring was popcorn flavouring. Popcorn lung is something that workers who work in factories that make popcorn have got from particles that are floating in the air. So that was banned, or just people stopped using it purely on the fact that there was this relationship of that happened. There's no evidence that it ever caused popcorn lung in anyone from an electronic cigarette. That was sort of preemptive, what if it could sort of thing, so they stopped using that. There's a couple more chemicals as well. There's diacetyl, I think is one, which was in some flavourings, which again people stopped using because people were worried it might cause something. I mean, it's a valid point that there hasn't been any long-term studies on the effects yet, but they are doing them. But even the results from the ones that have been done so far are being misconstrued in the press. There was one just recently where the headline was "E-cigarettes just as harmful as cigarettes." That was the headline.
Yeah, there's no evidence. There's no scientific evidence to support that yet.
But basically,
you could say that the risk could come in though later.
Yeah.
Actually, they are more dangerous for some reason that we don't know yet.
Well, the thing is, with that particular study, what they did was they took cells, they took a certain kind of cell, and they effectively soaked them in e-liquid. And what happened was the cells died after 24 hours, I think it was. Now, that study was actually wanting to compare with the effects of tobacco as well. So they made a sort of like they exposed the cells to tobacco smoke. And basically they couldn't actually compare it because the cells died in less than 20 minutes. So they couldn't get any good readings to actually compare it. But what they were saying was the effects are the same, but over a much longer period. So it's it's a difficult one. I mean, the NHS, I think, are going to actually prescribe e-cigarettes, which a lot of reports are saying is it's terrible they're doing that. But obviously they must think that the relative harm is less than someone continuing smoking.
Well, if if 40% of users are ex-smokers, then whatever that number is, whatever. Well, I guess it's if the number is approaching 3 million, it's 40% of 3 million people were smokers and are now e-cigarette users.
Yeah.
So you can say it works in that sense. I think the argument might be, or my concern would be, that there's no evidence that they're any more effective than nicotine patches at the moment. It could be that those numbers are high because it's a new thing coming in now. Because he did see very high numbers with nicotine patches, didn't he, and high success rates, and then people sort of regressed back to smoking again later.
I think even without sort of this evidence-based research, we can fairly safely assume that there's something like 150 different chemicals in a cigarette.
That'll be the shuttle bus leaving for the airport.
Right next to John.
I think what John was going to say was we can assume that they're going to be less harmful than cigarettes, which I think is the sort of general consensus amongst the majority of scientists, medical professionals that have commented. How much less harmful, we don't know yet, and that's what they're going to try and find out. But I don't think anyone or any popular opinion among scientists is going to say they're more harmful. I mean, like you say, there is a chance they could find something. It could be after 10 years you suddenly drop dead, but it's highly unlikely.
For me, I wouldn't make those arguments, but I would uncouple it and say I've got two concerns. One is that it's the unknowns, so potentially you could find that something in the e-vapor is more carcinogenic than tobacco. I suppose that's possible that they could find that out. Yeah. Over a long term, maybe. The other more serious one for me is people are still addicted to nicotine, and when 60% of people who use them are still smoking. So actually, I think it's the concern not that with e-cigarettes you never get off smoking for a lot of people, for a majority of people. They never quit. They just e-cigarettes, but they still then smoke.
It's true, but I mean, I think it's the lesser of two evils thing. Of those people, if this wasn't available, would they quit? I don't know what the statistics were for people actually quitting.
Yeah.
But I suspect the people who stop smoking cigarettes and start smoking e-cigarettes are going to be a lot more than the people who would have stopped smoking altogether.
Maybe, but I think even those figures you can't trust because I know I go out with ex-smokers all the time who smoke. Yeah. Call themselves ex-smokers, and they say e-cigarettes led to me stopping smoking because they smoke. So they're just kidding themselves.
I think there's a couple of other things here. I think it's. I hope that it doesn't go in the other direction as well, where everybody. There's lots of. I have read a couple of articles where it's like, this is the safe way of smoking, but it's definitely not. It's safer, but it's not safe. I don't think anybody's suggesting that.
Well, no. I mean, nicotine itself, it's still a poison, isn't it? So it's not going to do you much good.
Yeah, it's still a very addictive. Well, it's about as addictive as heroin. Nicotine.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, just going back to what you were talking about before about things like nicotine patches and stuff, I think that the main advantage of e-cigarettes over other sort of nicotine replacement options is that a lot of people, including myself, I think, are primarily addicted to the habit rather than the nicotine. I tried sort of like you could get inhalator ones a while ago, where it was basically just a plastic tube that you just breathed in. But because you basically just breathed air, and then you got a little bit of nicotine, you could feel it in your throat, and you weren't breathing any vapor out, it didn't feel like smoking. Therefore, you were consciously thinking of wanting a cigarette. With these, for me personally, it's completely replaced smoking because it feeds the habit. When in terms of the nicotine, I actually make my own liquid, and I've basically reduced the nicotine down to the point where I still get it, but it's not sort of like, I don't know, I think I'm 6 milligrams. I think I mix it to. But I don't particularly want to give up. I've never wanted to give up smoking, if you know what I mean. I enjoy the process. It's strange.
Well, I guess that's the thing. It's a good or bad thing depending on how you look at it. You could look at that and say, okay, it perfectly emulates or near enough emulates smoking, so that then people convert to that.
Mm-hmm.
But then, if you like you're saying, if there's like a habitual thing that you do and it just perpetuates that, then until you make it completely harm-free, you haven't actually fixed the problem, really. You've just substituted it for a slightly less harmful, which is still good, I guess.
Well, this is the thing, yeah.
Because there's no evidence that non-smokers are coming on board. I mean, if non-smokers were coming on board, then that would be a completely different complexion then. You would say, well, look, we've basically introduced a dangerous new drug here. But that doesn't seem to be happening. It just seems to be, if 40% of people come off... for me, it's just the worry is that that 60% just stays smokers, and would that be the case if it wasn't for e-cigarettes? Would some of them give up properly and stay off?
I think the thing, what I've found a lot actually with people that I've spoke to who are smokers and who have actually tried e-cigarettes or have them and still smoke, I think there's a lot of people try them and completely misjudge the strength of the e-liquid. A lot of people equate the milligram nicotine that you get on the side of a cigarette with the milligram nicotine concentration in e-liquid. So you get like sort of 18 milligram, 1.8% nicotine, which is really, really strong. And people try it, and it's horrible because it's completely overpowering. And a lot of people try them and go, oh no, they made me cough, I'll go back to smoking, and it's just bizarre. But I personally, I don't see why anyone would smoke a real cigarette after converting to e-cigarettes, because they're a lot cheaper for a start, tremendously cheaper. One of my work colleagues got me to go and buy 10 cigarettes from a couple of weeks ago, and 10 cigarettes were, I think it was £6 or something for 10 cigarettes. So it's a ludicrously expensive habit. My liquid that I buy, like I say, I mix my own, so I buy bottles of PG, VG and nicotine and flavouring, and for £25 I can get enough to make.
But again, you can argue that is a good or a bad thing, couldn't you? Could you not easily argue that makes it a bad thing, though? That basically the cost prohibitive nature of smoking means a lot of people are giving it up because I can't afford to do it anymore.
I don't think anybody gives up smoking because they can't afford it. People just pay whatever cigarettes are. I've never heard anyone give up smoking because it was costing them too much.
No, I mean that was one of the reasons why my wife wanted us to give up, and she's got an e-cig as well now, so she hasn't given up normal cigarettes, but she's cut down. But I don't think she's convinced as convinced with e-cigarettes as you are, Ross. I definitely don't think so. I mean she's got one on the holiday today, and that's only because she can have one in the room.
Yeah.
Without going outside, but she's no way does she think it anywhere replaces the satisfaction or the addiction or whatever that she has for a standard cigarette. I
mean, the other problem with e-cigarettes as well, which actually may become more of a problem this year, which I'll come on to, the sort of the cigarette-like ones that you get, the ones that
which is what she's got, because she will absolutely not have one like the one that you have.
The trouble with them is that they're absolutely rubbish. They don't work very well, and you have to get one, not one necessarily this big, but one that has a bit more power. You can get more air through it to actually replace smoking. Now the trouble is with these ones, there's actually there's a thing called the Tobacco Products Derivatives Products, TDP or TPD, Tobacco Product Derivatives Act. That is all the laws on tobacco products and sale and advertising and all this sort of thing. And this year, in May, I think, e-cigarettes are going to be added to that, even though they're not a derivative of tobacco. And what they're going to do is they're actually going to introduce loads of laws that basically effectively ban these. And mean that the only ones you'll be able to buy legally are going to be the ones that are cigarette-like, which are probably going to be produced by tobacco companies. because tobacco companies are now starting to sell these. And the reason.
Well, actually, I think the one that Reese got is produced by Imperial Tobacco. I think it's one of their brands.
Yeah, and the reason behind it is ludicrous. They're saying that with this, because you refill it yourself, you basically unscrew this top bit and then screw that off and just pour liquid in. Because it's refillable, you don't know what's in it, which I find ludicrous considering I'm the person putting stuff in it, and the ones that I buy that aren't refillable,
So,
I don't know what's in them.
But isn't that the same thing as doing homebrew beer?
Yeah, it's mad. The other thing they're going to do is stop you having tanks that hold more than 5 milliliters of liquid, I think.
What does that hold?
I think this is 30. 30 milliliters? Might be 25. And you're not going to be able to buy bottles that are bigger than these. You're not going to buy anything more than this. And the reason behind that is that obviously if someone got it and drank it, they'd poison themselves. Now, at the concentration of nicotine that you've got in these liquids to kill yourself is probably going to be quite a lot.
But don't we have? I've got Domestos at my house, and that's pretty scary.
You've got your nice lemon.
All they need to do is put a childproof lock on the top one,
which they all have. All the bottles you buy all have
But it's an effort. I'll tell you what the counter argument is from my point of view. The legislation to ban smoking in public places was at least as effective as e-cigarettes have been to curb smoking, right? So as a non-smoker, you see it making huge inroads. You see it no longer affecting you. Then you see this new thing come along, and these people are now doing it in public. Now, from a non-smoker's point of view, this is probably more extreme than my own view, but I think this is a little bit of where it's coming from. And you're saying you wonder where this hostility comes from. That also already been known, and we no longer have to put up with smokers in public places anymore. But we've now got to put up with smoke that may be toxic. And I suppose in a naive person's mind, maybe as toxic as cigarettes.
Yeah.
Now that's happening. Now we've got to win that war as well.
Yeah.
So that's maybe where it's.
I have been outside smoking this when someone who's got a cigarette in their hand has come up to me and said they're bad for you then, which I think is just hilarious. But talking about the sort of smoking in public places thing, I don't smoke my e-cigarette anywhere where you can't smoke. Now, you'd be amazed how many times I'll be out drinking and I go outside and I've got this outside and people are going, you smoke that in there, you smoke that in there. Now the thing is, I wouldn't, because I don't think that's right, you know what I mean?
But presumably that's one of the things that the legislation will eventually, you'd have thought, legislatively that's what will end up happening, is they'll just couple it with cigarette smoking and all the same laws that apply, basically.
Well, I don't mind that. I mean, I don't mind the sort of, when the smoking ban came in, to ban smoking in enclosed places, as a smoker, I did not mind. And I don't think many people do. I mean, I certainly don't think they should say e-cigarettes, you can smoke them anywhere you want, it doesn't matter. But even if they found out they're completely harmless. But it's the point. I don't think they should say, right, let's smoke inside again.
But it's the point not, though, that maybe you were, but a lot of people weren't. But yet, that piece of legislation did make huge inroads in reducing smoking and the harms from smoking.
Yeah.
So would the right approach not be ban anything new come into the market that's anything like smoking, that has nicotine in, or anything that's in a cigarette, ban it, or try and bring it down, and in the meanwhile keep legislating against smoking, and eliminate it that way, and carry on with that success and just keep legislating against smokers and smoking, and then eventually do away with it. Don't bring in a thing that maybe gets 40% of people off it, because that's never going to be a comprehensive or permanent solution. What you need to do is ban that, and then ban smoking ultimately.
I would say before you ban e-cigarettes, I would say ban cigarettes. Ban the one that's the most harmful. Ban cigarettes and then start legislating against e-cigarettes. Don't keep cigarettes and then start.
It's hard to do, though, isn't it? It's hard. It's something big of a.
Yeah.
It's like saying ban drinking, which we.
Exactly.
I think we all step back from our own habits.
Exactly, and this is the thing:
You would say ban
cigarettes,
drinking.
cigarettes and alcohol, they are amongst the most dangerous drugs around. Yet they won't ban them because they're normalized. You know, people accept them.
Yeah.
New things will get banned. You know, if you think of things like, you know, legal highs and stuff like that, although, to be honest, my opinion on them is most of them you should ban them because they're more dangerous than the illegal drugs they're trying to replace. But, you know what I mean? Things get banned that are less harmful than the things that are legal.
But that's right in a way. I mean, I
Yeah.
agree, it is a hypocrisy, but at the same time, you've got to think from the legislative point of view, it is much easier to ban something that's new. It hasn't made any inroads yet.
The other thing is my personal, you know, every now and then I might get really cynical and think that they're going to ban e-cigarettes because they're not bringing any money in to the tobacco companies and the tax. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's definitely. I mean, there's tax on alcohol, there's tax on cigarettes. It was fairly inevitable they're going to tax e-cigarettes. Anything that they think, if there's 2.6 million people,
or ban them, like Richard says. But I mean, the thing is, ultimately, the technology is so simple, and the ingredients are so basic that I think it's going to be something that's never going to be. It's never going to go away. I don't think, unless suddenly there is some research that says it's really, really bad for you.
Well, it has been. I mean, there has been studies, like you say. I did a bit of this before the show, and basically, at the moment, the safety risk from the evidence, the sort of aggregate of that evidence is the risk is similar to that of smokeless tobacco. So it's about that level of risk at the moment. But
because of the unknown thing.
Yeah. They've found risks with it, and they've found risks with smokeless tobacco. So it's about.
There's been loads of studies that have sort of come up with evidence of harmful chemicals, but the trouble is most of them that you read are either extreme exposure, like they've exposed something to pure concentrated liquid for 24 hours, which is like not realistic, or they do things where they get the electronic cigarettes and they overuse them. So basically, obviously, it's cotton and a heating element which is soaked in liquid. If that liquid runs out, it's just going to burn dry cotton. And once you start burning dry cotton, obviously you get loads of carcinogenic stuff coming off. Now the thing is, I have had, you call it a dry hit. I have had a dry hit once where I hadn't realised I'd run out. And the thing is, it is like sucking on burning cotton. So it's not something you're going to do more than like one accidental time.
Yeah.
Whereas what they did was they just kept on testing and then testing the chemicals. So it's not representative.
And presumably this sort of thing existed when rolling tobacco was, you know, it's just that once it becomes commonplace, people get an idea of what they're supposed to do, and nobody's like freaking out about, oh, you could roll 3 times the amount and smoke.
Well, the thing is, it's the equivalent of smoking a cigarette and lighting the wrong end of a cigarette, which most smokers will have done at some point in the dark when they've had a few. So obviously that is going to be much worse for you when you're burning the plastic or whatever it is in the filter of a cigarette.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, ultimately they're going to get long-term studies done. My personal opinion of it is that I will be very, very surprised if they find out the harm is anywhere near that of cigarettes. And I don't think they
will. But that's not really. I think the main concern is the fact that you've got millions, probably upwards of 3 million people in the UK now. It's only getting a minority of people off cigarettes. So is it actually hindering the effort to stop cigarette smoking? And it seems to me that it is. It has the effect of having a short-term win that looks really good because you take people from this very harmful chemical. You either most of them cut down, or you know quite a large minority give up altogether, seemingly.
Mm-hmm.
But would those, if you just wait a few years and get into legislation, would you eventually get those people to give up cold turkey? And that would then be better, wouldn't it?
I mean, I suppose ultimately we'll never know, but I do think in 10, 15, 20 years' time, they will look back and say that they had a massive effect at reducing the amount of deaths caused by lung cancer.
But would you agree, though, in principle?
In principle,
the better thing would be not introduce e-cigarettes at all, ban them, and then keep going with the legislation against smoking, though?
No. In principle, I say keep e-cigarettes, ban tobacco today.
Yeah.
And then start removing e-cigarettes. If you ban e-cigarettes today, I would probably start smoking.
Yeah. You have to do. Yeah.
I mean, and ultimately, the best thing would be ban it altogether. But practically, like we say, it's not going to happen. Like it won't happen with alcohol. But I do think it'll be looked back on as being one of the big health wins. I think my personal opinion is that they won't find any massive dangers from them, apart from the ones obviously inherent with nicotine itself.
I don't think we'll be looked back on like that. I think it won't. I don't think we'll find it. I think we'll find it slightly more harmful than we believe at the moment, but still an order of magnitude less bad than a tobacco cigarette.
Yeah, I mean they're bound to find some harms.
I don't think we'll see it as a win, because I think what we actually need is like a change in societal attitude rather than. I don't think we need something that is like a crutch.
I mean, one of the potential problems with them, of course, is the fact that it could be seen as normalising smoking again.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. If you ban it in public places, and actually smokers are starting to get a bad rep and feel bad about it, and a lot of them are giving up for that reason, and it's starting to suddenly seem to be like, from being, commonly accepted to lots of people looking down on smokers.
Mm-hmm.
E-cigarettes seems to have turned the tables a little bit, because that's so socially common that you see it. It sort of normalises cigarette smoking again somehow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even though it's actually bringing 40% of people off it at the same time, because the two things are linked in people's minds. It's sort of, and I think that's the frustration that you're seeing is that people have seen cigarette smoking in public places banned, and they've thought, get in, about time as well. And then now they're seeing people vaping in public places, and they're like, for fuck's sake. I think that's what it is. I don't think that personally. I think that's what it is.
I mean, I'd agree with you, and like I say, that this is one of the reasons why I wouldn't, even if I'm in a pub where someone says, "Oh no, you can smoke that in here," I don't like doing it, because of the fact that I know there's people who didn't like it when people smoked, and they won't like it. Those same people will not feel any different about e-cigarettes. So I personally, apart from in my house, when I was still smoking, I stopped smoking in my house because I didn't want my house to smell of smoke. But I do smoke the e-cigarette in the house because it doesn't make my house smell of smoke.
Yeah.
But yeah, in someone else's house, for example, I wouldn't, unless they were a smoker who smoked in their own house, I wouldn't smoke it, because it's like, mind you, I wouldn't have done it when I was smoking either. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this year with this law that's coming in, as to whether it's going to have a significant effect on people. Even when they stop selling the equipment or whatever, you'll just be able to buy it off the internet. So I suspect it won't make a difference to the people who are already smoking e-cigarettes. But it'd be interesting to see if it reduces the uptake. Like if we've got to like 700,000 to 2.4 million in how many years? Like 4 years? Was it 2012? If suddenly the uptake levels off and less people start smoking cigarettes, that could be quite interesting.
So, just to ask you both then, we've talked about e-cigarettes, but you know this thing that we discussed previously on the show about the relative harms of different drugs?
Yeah.
And say for argument's sake, and I think it probably is the case, but say for argument's sake, that chart was quite definitive because it was a scientific consensus, which can change, but I can't personally think of a more reliable way to do it than the scientific consensus of relative harms of, with you'd have to put some value judgments in to see how those harms actually really happen in society. Something like, for instance, we're talking about nicotine here. nicotine on paper is a bad drug because it's very addictive and it has some negative effects. However, the evidence, you'd have to couple in also the evidence of uptake of people, and the evidence of people using these cigarettes to get the nicotine hit seems to be a tiny proportion of people. So actually, that would be low on the harms table, even though the drug itself might be high.
Yeah.
How it affects society. So if you have that sort of Professor Nutt style, relative harms thing, is that how you would legislate if you were a legislator, both of you? I mean, that's how I can't think of a better way to do it. I don't understand why there's value judgment coming in other than that.
It's a difficult one because, yes, logically, of course, that's how you would. No question about it, because why else wouldn't you? The difficulty is that it's the popular opinion thing. You mentioned Professor Nutt. I don't know what he's doing lately. I've not heard of him doing anything.
He was working on the alcohol as a vape, basically alcohol as a gas. He was doing that, wasn't he?
But I mean, I can't remember what year was it when he got in massive trouble.
When he got sacked.
Yeah, he basically said, what was it? He said taking ecstasy was less harmful than horse riding.
Yeah, equine ecstasy. Yeah.
And all he was doing was stating a fact, statistical fact. Yet it got him sacked because of the fact that people can't. It's the emotional versus the logical thing. You can't take the emotions out of it, and it's the same sort of people that if you said, the same sort of people who will say, "Oh, drugs are terrible." People who take drugs are terrible, yet they'll drink alcohol because they don't equate that as a drug because it's an accepted one, and they don't think of it as risky because everybody does and it's legal. Whereas, smoking cannabis.
Well, even caffeine. I mean, caffeine's an even more extreme example.
Exactly.
Pregnant women, it's quite a dangerous drug to take if you're pregnant woman, and the amount that they're now putting in, sort of, the famous coffee shop ones, that, the amount of caffeine in them, it's a dangerous drug when you take it in that quantity.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the sort of emotional thing. It does have to be taken into consideration, unfortunately. I mean, I'm interested to see. It was last year, wasn't it? That was it 12 states in America that decriminalized marijuana?
Yeah,
it's 12. Has there been any sort of statistics come out of those states about, obviously there'll be less arrests made because people won't be getting arrested for possession of marijuana. Has there been more people taking it up? Has there been more sort of apathy amongst the community? Yeah. Which is what everyone says happens. No one bothers working anymore.
Well, I've been meaning to look into that, but I think it's still too early days for maybe the states, because you sometimes get an anomalous result early on. Yeah. Because of course you could actually have an increase in marijuana users initially because of the fact that it's
novelty.
Yeah. But if you look at Amsterdam in the Netherlands, the use of cannabis by comparison to London and the United Kingdom is lower. It's legalised. It actually went over long term. It went down. So
well, that's the thing.
I'm going to interject here just because my battery's rapidly running out. But I think, hang on.
Not sure this outside broadcasting works,
He's not going to interrupt.
Right, as I was saying, before I was so brutally interrupted by people having a life. So I think you really have to look at the evidence of Portugal, because I know in Portugal they decriminalise a lot more than just marijuana. They decriminalise heroin and stuff, and they've put up registered places where people can go and take heroin and needle swap. So there's a huge research project going on in Portugal and Lisbon, and specifically for that. So I think things like that you have to hang on.
What's one of these things? I mean, has banning something been effective at controlling something? Obviously, in America you had prohibition and stuff. That never worked.
No.
Has banning a drug eradicated?
Well, he just drives it underground, doesn't it? Exactly. Any drug, you drive it underground. Somebody else makes the money, not the taxpayer.
Organised criminals.
Yeah, organised criminals.
It's less dangerous. It's all bad.
Yeah. Now you may say that the government doesn't have many ethics, but the criminals have less ethics.
Yeah.
So
also, it also ends up being a huge. I mean, the whole war on drugs thing is a thing that's being talked about, the failure of it now, and rightly so, because it also distracts police and military forces. Because if you look at countries where the supplies coming from, like Colombia and stuff like that, it's just completely crippled that country, because all efforts have gone into trying to fight the criminals. But if you decriminalised it, obviously, by definition, you wouldn't have that problem.
Yeah, there's been a number of research papers across the world from various countries that have all tried to carry on the war on drugs, and it just simply does not work. It's never worked. It will not work in any situation, because that's not the way to do it. Yeah. And it's fact. It just doesn't work. They've tried. Each country has tried the different ways to do it, and the only way that they've managed to get the population who use illicit drugs down is to give them safe places to do whatever they do, and safe places to obtain it, and safe places to, and proper programs to help them get off it. Because I'm not saying that they don't just give up on them, but part of that, any one of the schemes that have been more successful than the ones that haven't, have been a multi-tier approach.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in America after the next election. I don't know when the election is, but they're all on the news at the moment. But I'm sure at least a couple of the people who are going for the presidency have said that if they get into power, the first thing they'll do will be ban marijuana in all these states that have done it.
Well, yeah, because
I think it's a shame, because it's obviously
political. It's a political issue, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And that works, lads. It so works.
Yeah. As long as it's not Donald Trump.
Oh well, hey, I mean, my views on the American populace is very low. If he does actually get in, well, quite frankly, I think I'm justified in saying it's a failed state.
So Richard, do you ever think this country will decriminalise marijuana?
Well, it did get. It
got moved down to Class C, didn't it?
Yeah, and then it got recategorised as B. But interestingly, we have got a little bit like what the states have done in the US a little bit, where I know Durham Constabulary now have effectively decriminalised it. Their chief police commissioner has said, basically, if you grow it or buy it, we will not prosecute you, because you will not be arrested. So, and also you've just got a street caution, haven't you, for possession and things like that. So effectively, I think it's a political issue. If you are soft on drugs, including marijuana, you can't get elected. So you've got politically and legislatively, you've got to say no, that we don't allow this. However, in reality, I think police forces and stuff recognise because they have to triage their services. They're sensible enough to think, well, we're not gonna pursue that. Whether that gets you elected, well, hard for sure, but
which I suppose ultimately will probably be a what's the word, not a compromise, but a sort of an understanding that does work with people who aren't for recreational drugs and aren't interested in anything harder, or they will grow it in their own home for their own use. They'll not be wandering around the streets flaunting it or whatever. They'll just be using it themselves. Which, why would the police be bothered about that?
Yeah. But I mean, if you believe the drug isn't a harmful drug, then why would you be bothered if people are growing it and making a profit on it? I mean, what you should be doing is making those people. Obviously, those people are not going to declare their income because the activity is illegal. But obviously, if you legalise it, that taxable income then comes through the state. So that's while you're doing this, we're hard on it, but in reality we're not. You're not getting the full benefit that the state can get. The state can get an even bigger benefit rather than just wasting his time. It could also make money from it.
Well, I can't remember which state it was in America. But one of those states was talking about how much money was being brought into the sort of local economy from they're not coffee shops, they're they're more like pharmacists, aren't they, in America? But
Yeah.
because they've made it into a legitimate business, now all that money, rather than going off into the underground criminal world or whatever, it's coming in the local economy.
Yeah.
So,
And it's logic, really, when you think about it. It's logic. I mean, I know people don't want to believe it, but facts are facts. If you make it easy for people to get it one way, they won't have to get it the hard way, because it's quite hard, to get drugs. Not hard drugs. I mean, it's quite hard to obtain. It's not an easy thing. But if you can just go down to the shop and go, give me some X, whatever, and that or Y, not ecstasy, and I don't know whether that's a drug or not. No. Anyway, I'm literally got 4% of my battery life.
We're at the end of the show, so I think we'll wrap it up.
So good topics this evening. I really enjoyed them. I wish I could have contributed more, but there was people around, buses around, squeaky doors, and wind. Not my wind, but wind flowing through. But it was really good. I enjoyed it. If we're going to do an outside broadcast again, maybe I'll try and find a bit quieter place.
Excellent.
Right, well, thank you to the viewing public for joining us, and I'll now play our outro. Say goodbye, chaps.
Goodbye, chaps.
Goodbye, chaps.